Hey guys, what's up? This is Kenny from Eagle Eye Shooting. Thanks for joining my channel. So, on the way home from work today, I decided to stop by my local gun store to see what they got for reloading supplies. And I happened to catch this on sale, and this was the last box that was on shelf of these Sierra Match King 168 grain hollow point bow tail. I got these out the door for $22.10. Really happy with the price. I just wish they had a couple more boxes. But we got one, at least here on the reloading bench for now, and we're going to do some testing today. But to go over my last video, I was shooting some of these 30-06 factory rounds, and I was shooting some Winchester Super X PowerPoint 180 grain, and they weren't really doing too good, at least out of my rifle. I was getting about a 4.4 inch group, and I don't really think that was that good, but at least we were able to tag an IPSC target at 310 yards. I got it at least 8 times out of my 10 shots, so pretty happy with that. But I'm pretty sure after today, we're going to see if I can reload these Sierra Match Kings and get a sub-MOA group at least. We're also going to be doing some more testing with these powder-coated lead bullets. In that video, we were testing a pistol powder HP 38, and I loaded those up from 8.5 grains, and then I skipped over to 10, then worked up to 11.5 in 0.5 grain increments. We found that the HP 38 was giving us a pretty good performance. We're getting a low single-digit standard deviation number and some low extreme spread, but we're only getting about a 1400 FPS velocity out of these bullets. So one thing that I noticed when I came back home from that range session, I took the time to actually sort out my brass and kind of go over the difference between the factory Winchester and also my loaded powder coated bullets. And I found a couple interesting things about it. Comparing my brass, the powder coated lead bullets, to the Winchester box, looking at the case itself, I found that on the case neck I was getting a lot of soot. And doing some research, I found out that means I was getting some poor obturation. And what that means is that the case neck itself is not sealing inside the chamber as efficiently as it should. Thus, gases were going around the case and causing soot to form around the case neck down to the shoulder. So that tells me that the pistol powder was kind of low in charge. I also noticed the primer. It looked a little bit, let's say, bloated. I don't know if you can see that there. It looks a little bubbly. And that's a sign of a low pressure. That tells me that I'm able to load HP 38 a little bit more than 11.5 grains from our initial testing. So like I said, I'm hoping to get up to 2200 FPS, and I'm going to work in 0.5 grain increments. Now, from the last session, we got up to 11.5, and we were getting around 1400 FPS. So I'm going to go some more in 0.5 grain increments and load it from there. But for now, I'm going to show you guys some tips and pointers of how I reload these Sierra Match Kings on bolt action cartridges such as the 30-06. So stay tuned, and I'll be right back. Like I mentioned before, I think it's very imperative to take good notes when you're customizing a round for your barrel or rifle. I'm going to go ahead and use this comparator kit from Hornady, and it's going to give me a headspace measurement. Now, I did about 10 of these and I averaged them out, and they're roughly 2.045. Now, I wrote that number down, that way I can reference off of that whenever I do some resizing. That way I know if I bumped the shoulder or not. So, from my experience so far, it looks like bolt action rifles like to have a really tight headspace. Thus, I'm only going to do some neck sizing, and what I like to do for that is I take a Sharpie and I go ahead and I color the neck that we're going to be sizing only. So I'll go ahead and fill this in. That way I can set the die to where I want it. So let me go ahead and fill this in, and I'll show you what I do next. Now that we got the case all sharpied out, I even did a little bit of the shoulder. That way, if I run the sizing die a little too low, I'm going to see if I'm doing any work on there. So I'm going to use my lead turret press. I had it set up for 30-06. What we're going to do is size just the neck, and we're going to run it through the sizing die and look for the marking on the case neck themselves. So what you do is you back out your sizing die roughly 4 turns, and you're going to go ahead and run it up the die and look for a marking. I don't know how well it's showing up on the camera, but right about there, I got about 3/4 of the case neck sized. There's a nice good line that I can see from here. So keep running it down until you see that only your case neck is being sized. Okay. And make sure you got plenty of lube on your case. That way you don't get a stuck case like I almost did. But you can see there that only thing that was sized was the case neck itself. Now at this point, the only thing to really worry about is that your expander ball on your sizing die is going to give enough neck tension for your bullet. Now I go ahead and I zero out my micrometer, and I'm going to take a measurement of the inside of the case neck and to make sure that I got at least 0.02 of neck tension around the bullet. Now that case neck showed at 0.307, and we know that these bullets on Sierra are roughly 309. So that tells me that my expander ball is going to give enough tension for this bullet without using a factory crimp die. Now that we got a headspace measurement and we got our die set up, we're going to go ahead and get an overall length for this bullet itself. Take a regular bullet that you're going to reload with and go ahead and lay down a Sharpie mark also. Get all the way up to the ogive. After you do that, take another case that has not been resized or anything, just fireform brass, and make sure that this bullet can slide in and out with a little bit of tension to it. Now, I went ahead and I took the decapping pin off my sizing die, and I just knocked the primer out of it without doing any kind of resizing at all. That way, when I do my overall length measurement, I got a nice flat surface to measure off of. But now that I got a bullet that has a little bit of tension and a spent fireform brass, I'm going to go ahead and throw this into the rifle to get an overall length. So very carefully, I'm going to go ahead and sit the bullet inside the barrel chamber and go ahead and close the bolt down. Now you'll feel a little bit of resistance as you push forward and cam over the locking lug. After that, take out your bullet very carefully, and you'll see that the bullet got pushed into the case ever so slightly. So you're going to want to do this measurement at least 5 times. That way you can do an average. And what the Sharpie is for is basically if the bullet decides to get stuck on the lands of your rifle, and when you go to extract the cartridge, it decides to pull the bullet out, you have a bark on your bullet that you can reference off of and compare it to your case neck. That way you can still take a measurement. So I already did an average and I did a measurement, and for my rifle and this bullet, my overall length max is going to be 3.316. Now what I plan on doing is having this bullet jump the ogive 15 thousandths of an inch. So that's going to set my overall length to 3.301. So now that we have our Lee full-length sizing die set up to where it is only neck sizing, and we determine an overall length, I'm going to go ahead and start loading these up for some ladder testing. I'm going to use Varget for the first initial test on these Sierra Match King. And I'm going to, like I said, load up some ladder tests. But when we do our testing, I'm going to do something a little different. Instead of the traditional 100-yard ladder load testing and seeing if they group, I'm going to do something called a robin round test. Now, what that means is that I'm going to push back at a further distance, and for this instance, it is going to be 300 yards, and I'm going to shoot one round for each ladder load. What we're looking for is a accuracy window. We're going to see that there's going to be some bullets that are going to hit high, and some bullets are going to hit low, and then there's going to be a stream of bullets that are going to sit about the same elevation. That's going to be our accuracy window, and what that's going to do is that's going to give us a starting point for this rifle that is supposed to produce the best accuracy. So hopefully when I get out to the range, I can film this and show you guys what a robin round test is. So the other two bullets are basically just for backup. And also if they don't work or I get some pressure signs, I only have 2 bullets to demill or pull instead of having 9 more bullets or 10 bullets ladder load. Other than that, we're going to do more testing with the powder coated lead bullet and see how these Sierras do. So stay tuned, guys. I'll see you guys at the range.
Negativity's leeching. Any shred of composure, rationale is decayed and left me bound in madness. I reach for calm, I stop for a balance of no. This burden tortures me.
So today's conditions were definitely not the best conditions to want to do any kind of load development, but I just went with it anyway. I've been waiting for the last week just to get out there, test some of these rounds, but I wanted to take it upon myself to do a challenge also to see how well I could call for these conditions. I was getting about a 60 mile per hour southwest gust wind. It was pretty dramatic to where it was almost knocking me left or right, even with my lead sled, though I was still able to hold my elevation perfectly horizontal. I was having to adjust my scope 16 MOA left when I did my first initial shots. So we did some testing still, and I was able to at least test for some pressure signs. And the first thing I do for when I do my robin round testing is I make 5 sighter rounds. Now, for instance, I started out at 48.9 grains of Varget, and I went up in 0.5 grain increments, and I ended at 51.3. Now, my first sighter rounds are 5 rounds, and I started at 48 grains. And you can see here, This is an initial testing for pressure, and using this military brass, you can see there that there's no pressure signs at all. Maybe just a little bit of a flattened primer, but nothing to really be concerned about. And the first thing I noticed right away at 48.9 was I was getting a little bit of a crater on the primer. As you can see, where the the firing pin hit the primer, there's a little bit of a crater around. But as I went up in the ladder testing, I noticed that this was consistent with every single round, all the way up to 51.3 grains. So that just tells me that maybe the brass was made a little bit different compared to the old military brass that had loaded up for the sighter rounds. So I'm just going to go ahead, and next time I actually do my ladder testing and robin round testing at that 300-yard distance, I'm actually going to start off with 49.5 grains. And according to the reloading manual, this says the max charge is 51.7. So I'm probably going to go up from 49.5, and I'm going to probably end up at roughly 52.2 or 52.3. That way I got a good range of where I could maximize my velocity of this round. Because like I said, I do plan on shooting this long range, roughly around 800 yards. So I really feel that robin round testing really helps out those that want to shoot at longer ranges, and hunters that want to shoot at longer ranges and get that first round impact. Now, when you're doing your, the traditional ladder testing at 100 yards, and for instance, you find a round that works, sub MOA, and you make a dope chart. All this was done during the summertime, 80-degree weather, whatnot. Come wintertime, when you want to, do some longer range shots, you bust out your dope chart, dial up, take that shot, and then you find that it falls short. Well, this is where I'm talking about the vertical deviation really helps out. We could compensate left to right for windage. What we can't compensate for is where this bullet is going to lob into. When it gets to colder weather, around 30 to 40 degrees, the weather plays a big impact on how well your powder actually burns. It almost acts like it's a lower charge. So when you do your load development, you notice, for instance, you find a round that group sub MOA at 49 grains. But the group prior to that at 48.5 was shooting low and all over. That's where this comes into play. I think when you do your load development at the vertical deviation, where it seems to group up, at least you can eliminate that factor of, if it's going to shoot higher or lower. So I wanted to apologize to you guys that I wasn't able to 100% show you the full robin round testing. Come next video, I'm definitely going to show you guys how these rounds are going to be hitting on the target and show you what the accuracy window is looking like out of my rifle. But I really hope that this video helps out those that are getting into long range shooting. And if there's any pointers that you guys have, go ahead and leave a comment below. I really appreciate you guys watching, and hopefully we can get some good results. I also have some Hornady ALD match, 168 grain, that I will be testing out. Now these are the ballistic tip, and is also the same weight as the Sierra Match Kings. I'm also going to be doing some cast load testing on the next video, along with the robin round testing. And we're going to start off again at 12 grains of HB38, testing out these cast 153 grain NOE cast lead bullets. Hopefully we can get something that works. I also plan on later on in the future to test some of these 230 grain cast lead bullets from Lee. These work really good on the 300 blackout, and I'm going to be using IMR or Hodgdon 4198. I had a viewer here, his name is Dima Proc, and he's really been helping me out with some load development and some information. And he gave me some ballistic information for using quick load, and he definitely showed me how 4198, which I thought same thing too, was going to be a great powder for these cast lead bullets. So again, guys, thank you for watching. Come next video, like I said, we're going to finish out these ladder testing, and we're going to be doing some more cast lead testing. Alright guys, thanks again for watching. I'll catch you on the next video.